This is Matthew McConaughey.
Natalie Portman.
James Patterson.
Michael Ian Black.
And you are listening to
Five Questions
with Dan Schawbel.
Jodi, welcome to Five Questions.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, congrats on the book. I have it right here. The only thing I don't see here is I don't see any, where's the fin?
That's right. Where is the fin?
So I'd like to start off because a lot of your book revolves around faith. What role did your faith have in your upbringing, and how has it impacted the decisions you've made in your career and life ever since?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I just want to say thanks for having me. And I need to just clarify right off the top with your listeners and your viewers that I never wanted to write a book, ever, autobiography, memoir, whatever you want to call it. But when Tisdale kind of approached me once, I said no. Second, I said no. Third time, they kind of just pitched to me, if one person picked up the book and read a little story, because again, it's not an autobiography or a memoir. It's just a collection of some little stories, not chronological, that happened in my life, where I can kind of focus on other people and say thank you to other people and sort of have like a love letter to Howard and to Disney. So Sarah said, if one person picked up the book and was encouraged by one of the little stories, would it be worth it to you to stop saying no and say yes? And I really thought about that. And I was like, yeah, if one person picked it up. So as far as my faith journey, because again, I don't call this really a Christian book. I mean, it's just some stories that happened in my life along the journey. And I kind of grew up in a Catholic home and loved all of the aspects of that growing up, as far as like the sacraments and just kind of all the different special things about the faith. But what was starting to happen was I started to have this relationship personally with God, where I felt like I could just talk to him and he'd listen, and I'd feel peaceful, and I felt joy, and I felt like I had this prompting to get to know what that relationship was all about more. So when I met my husband Ray in 1980 at Opryland Theme Park, he had kind of started talking about this relationship thing. And I thought, that's sort of what I'm starting to sense. You know, I grew up with a church atmosphere in a building, but that really wasn't what was prompting in my heart. Was more of a relationship and not necessarily about a religion or following these sets of rules and going to this particular building. So that's kind of where it all started. And so you'll see that sort of obviously woven into my little stories, because it is who I am. I mean, I started in the industry when I was 18, and there was never any surprise with agents in New York or LA, and then starting when I worked with Disney, to say like, oh, can you kind of keep that hidden, or can you not talk about that? Or pretty much there's never been a surprise. This is Jodi. This is who Jodi is. And if she mentions about her faith, or that she's prayed about something, or she feels blessed, roll with it, because that's who she is. So
that's interesting, because I talk to a ton of famous people, and sometimes they have to hide parts of who they are in order to get parts in advance. So it's really refreshing to hear that.
Yeah. And I can empathize with people in various different communities and aspects of where they can't be their true self of who they are. And that's really heartbreaking. So I feel very blessed. I really do. I feel very thankful that I have been able to have the freedom to be able to just be who I am in an authentic way.
And speaking about your career, what were some of your struggles trying to land your first gigs on Broadway?
You know, that's a great question. I think my biggest battle was fear, and also this expectation of this timing. You know, I left home when I was 17, and my dad had left the family when I was 11. So I was pretty much on my own at that point. My mom was going through her own struggles and starting a new relationship. So at 17, it was like I kind of had to make it or break it. So I think I put so much pressure on myself for supporting myself and going to college and scholarship and working, so that when I started working professionally at 18, the pressure that I put on myself was tremendous. So it wasn't like I didn't need to prove myself to anyone, but I needed to support myself and I needed to make a living. So that was the pressure that I put on myself. And it didn't have to be Broadway. It just needed to be a paycheck. I needed to find a paycheck doing what I knew how to do in theater, because I really didn't know how to do anything else. This was really it for me. And I thought, oh my goodness, I need to make a living singing, dancing, and acting. I don't want to be famous and I don't need to be rich. So that was kind of like my mentality. I need to make a living. I got to figure this out. And at 18, that's a lot. That's a lot to figure out by yourself when you're a kid. When I think of my kids at 18, I think, oh my gosh. I mean, it was crazy, so you're living on people's sofas and you have $100 in your pocket. And all of a sudden you're like, I need to figure this out. I got to get a job. And again, it was just kind of divinely laid out that my husband met Barry Moss. Barry Moss had seen him in a show in Birmingham, Alabama, had given him his card. And then, Ray said, hey, my girlfriend is interested in musical theater. Barry's like, is she good? And he's like, yeah, she's good. And he was like, okay, well, when she comes to New York, just have her give me a call. So it's just, Hughes Moss Casting was the #1 casting agent for all of Broadway and every national tour back in all of the 80s, well into the 90s. So, and I didn't know who he was. I just had this business card to say, hey, give him a call. Went to an audition that he arranged. Of course, I didn't have my equity card. And so I was 19 and I got my equity card on the first national tour of Joseph, an amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, and the ensemble, and started a paycheck. And I can't tell you how relieved I was that I could feed myself and I could take care of myself and support myself. It was just a miracle. It really was.
Well, yeah, you need talent, you need timing, and then it certainly helps to have connections, especially in the competitive industry. But that's really great to hear your intent. And I think it's interesting because, you're most known as being the voice of Ariel in The Little Mermaid, and that you're the voice of Ariel. So it's not like you needed the fame. Like, I think a lot of people might not have seen you visually before, right? But they know the voice if you say it. And so I think that kind of probably lends to your ability to kind of stand back and maybe be the voice or kind of provide some sort of entertainment without being the face of something.
Yeah.
Do you think that plays into it?
I think so. I mean, again, for me, I never focused on any type of being recognized or any kind of fame or finance. That just wasn't my whole reason for entering in the industry. Was I felt like I had a certain set of gifts and talent that I needed to share. Otherwise, it's that feeling of like, you're going to explode if I don't. It's that kind of a feeling. That was my intention of jumping into this crazy industry. Obviously, it wasn't for security or job security or schedule or anything like that, because you fly by the seat of your pants every single day practically. But Mermaid really surprised me, because I was just supposed to do the film and then disappear, and no one would ever know unless you stopped your VHS and kind of figured out who's who. Because Walt's whole thing about Snow White, Sleeping Beauty, Cinderella is that you get involved in the story. You don't need to know who's behind the microphone. Don't let that be a distraction. So it wasn't until the screenings had happened, and then right before the film came out at the beginning of October, I went on a press tour, and I was like, why are we doing that? It's supposed to be hidden. No one's supposed to know. And I'm doing 8 shows a week on Broadway now. So I've got my life. That's my life. And they said, well, we're going a different way with this. And that's, when Disney changed, everything changed. I would never guess in a million years that, 35 years later, I'm still with the company and still I'm sitting here talking to you about The Little Mermaid, and that every job that I've had has been affiliated either through the film or because of my relationship with Howard or my relationship with the company. And all of it is just a huge, lovely surprise.
Yeah, I wonder if all the voices of all the princesses ever get together and like have a party once a year.
Well, we have a group text. So
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah. So, well, Paige and I have been friends since 1981 because she was in the first national tour of Oklahoma with my husband. So I met her before I got married. So we've been friends. I can't even do the math, whatever, 44, 42, 2 years, something like that. And then Linda Larkin, the speaking voice of Jasmine, and then Irene Bedard, the speaking voice of Pocahontas. So the four of us are on a text chain. So we're really, really close friends. Yeah, which is awesome.
Yeah, and a lot of what you talk about is relationships. In what ways has a love story in The Little Mermaid related to your own relationship?
My own relationship in my marriage?
Yes.
Oh, no one's ever asked me that before. I think what's neat about Ariel, and again, this is an interesting thing that people bring up quite often to talk about, but in the first 12 to 15 minutes of the film, you can see Ariel pursuing something outside of herself, something outside of the bubble of her life, and wanting something more. So her I Want song, Part of Your World, is really not about a guy, not about a prince. It's about something that she feels inside of her that is kind of like calling to her. I can relate to that because growing up in a smaller town in Illinois, where theater wasn't really existing, and I had never seen a Broadway show, and I was probably 8 years old when I told my mom I would like to be a professional singer, actor, and dancer. I don't want to be famous or rich, but I would like to support myself doing that. So I kind of figured that out at 8, but having never seen a show. So it's kind of like, and so I can relate to Ariel in that. She had investigated the human world and had this kind of like fascination with it, sort of like my fascination into the theater world of something I really didn't know if I could grasp. And then at a show, in my first professional job, I meet my husband, so it does kind of correlate. Whereas Ariel is kind of saving this prince and making this connection with him and realizing, oh my gosh, he is part of that. So my husband's 4 years older than I am. And he had started to, pursue the industry professionally. And I thought, gee, I can kind of jump into that and go along with him. So yeah, so I think there is a lot of correlation between Ariel and myself.
That's awesome. And such a beautiful story. And what's your best piece of career advice?
I think, especially for this industry and this day and time, while we're dealing with the pandemic, and I do this with master classes, even through Zoom and things like that, with high school and college age students. And when they ask me about pursuing the industry, my question back to them is why? Why? Tell me why you want to pursue this industry. And then I can get the clue of what the purpose is. Like, what's your purpose of it? Because is it to be famous, to be TikTok famous, to be on social media famous? Or is it because you actually have a natural skill set? You have to be born with a natural skill set. I cannot tell you how many times I tell people, you cannot learn how to sing. You are born with the gift of being able to sing. Then you train and you build on top of that. You grow, you stretch, you learn, you tweak. But you cannot teach someone how to sing. It is a natural, God-given birth gift. It really is. And so that's when they ask me the question, give me some career advice, I turn around and ask them, why? I want to know why. That's going to give you your answer. Because if you tell me it's because my mom and dad told me that I'm really good, and I want to be on stage, and I want people to see me, and I want to hear the applause. I want to know what it's like and be on the set, and I want to do this, and I want to do the press and the public. Then I'm like, sorry, you missed the boat.
And they probably won't make it. They probably won't make it by doing that. They do it for the wrong reasons.
Yeah. What I didn't hear from you is, first of all, humility, because listen, there are 500 girls, while I'm auditioning for Ariel, there's hundreds and hundreds of girls that are just as good, just as talented. And I know that. I know that I am replaceable in every job. And every time I've got a yes at an audition after 100 no's, I'm replaceable. So humility is the first thing I look for, because you have to have that gauge of reality. If you think you are all that, you are not. I'm sorry. I mean, that's just clear right off the bat. But I like to know what the purpose is. So if I were to give somebody career advice, I'd say, ask yourself why you want to jump into this crazy, erratic, unstable business. And that answer deep in your heart will let you know what your purpose is and if you're meant to go down this road. Because if you need stability, if you need a regular paycheck and you need a schedule, go find something else. Absolutely find out. But you've got to figure out what your natural giftedness is. You have to know what your skill set is. Everybody has them. Everybody has natural gifts, natural talent in something. That's the key. You have to figure out what that is. But when somebody's going into this industry and they don't have the skill set, but they're pounding and pounding against it, they're going to be miserable. They're going to be miserable. And the purest form of purpose for me, and this is because this is my natural skill set, is when I'm standing on stage and I'm connecting with a song. And it just happened. I did the maiden voyage at the Disney Wish just a couple weeks ago. And it happened. I'm standing on stage and I'm sharing a song with an audience. And there's that connection, and the world is perfect. It's like I'm fulfilling my purpose. And once you have that feeling of, I'm doing exactly what I was created to do, and it feels right, and it's working, and there's a connection, and the audience is with me, and I'm in the zone, I get in the zone, and then you get off stage and you go, yep, that's what I was created to do. Whatever that is for that student, that's the feeling they've got to get to, but they got to figure it out. They got to figure out what that is. And it may not be this crazy industry.
Well, that's great advice. And thank you so much for being on the show.
Well, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it.